So friends, with this, I am going to go ahead. Jason, if you feel like we've let everybody in, okay. So friends, get ready for it. Welcome to our 60th, 60 online gathering for congregational leaders across the country. This time is called Being Church, and it's sponsored by ELCA's coaching ministry. I'm Jill Beverlin, and I'm so blessed to be the National Coordinator of Coaching for the ELCA, and I'm one of your facilitators today. It's important for us to be reminded as we gather that this time is meant to be a safe and brave space for the people of our church to bring the truth of who they are and how they are doing. These conversations are an intentional step to live more fully into God's dream for us as the body of Christ. So friends, today we welcome back Rachel Alley, Program Director of Youth Ministries for the ELCA. Rachel's going to help us unpack our last segment of the Growing Young series. Rachel, faithful, faithful servant of Christ, thank you for being with us again today.
Sure, thank you. It's so good to be with everybody. And it is a spring day. I've got my windows open in my house, and I'm sorry you got snow, Jill. And the my wind chimes that I got for Christmas are dinging in the background that I love. So it reminds me of the Holy Spirit and the wind blowing. And that is my earnest prayer for you as we conclude this conversation today on growing young, is that the Holy Spirit blows in your ministry, in your congregation. And if when we're done today, if you still want to have some further conversation about growing young, let me know. There'll be some new things coming from the ELCA on this, but you've heard this from me before, and I want to remind you at the very beginning, this is not a program. This is just a conversation that begins with people in your, it's not a program by the ELCA. This is a conversation of the 6 strategies, and ways to make your congregation better, hopefully grow, but certainly more stronger, and reaching people and sharing Jesus. So let's get started today. I'm going to hopefully share my screen. There we go. And let's put it on full. There we go. Can everybody see it? Give me a thumbs up if you can. Awesome. All right. Well, today is our last session together, and just a reminder one more time: a growing young congregation is a congregation that is engaging young people aged 15 to 20. They are growing spiritually, emotionally, missionally, and sometimes numerically. And can you believe we've covered this whole chart? We started with key chain leadership. We've talked about, you heard from some young leaders. We've talked about best neighbors. We've talked about empathy and what that means in regards to walking with one another, sitting on a bench together and listening to one another. We talked about making Jesus's message a priority, not being afraid to talk about the gospel. We talked about warm relationships and what that is, and it's authentic relationships. And then today we're going to talk about prioritizing everywhere in your congregation, along with Pastor Jen Collins will talk with us about changing culture and her experience with growing young at St. Andrews. So first of all, though, prioritizing young people everywhere. I cannot wait for you to meet Dan and hear his story. So this was an interview that we did earlier today. Okay. Hey, Daniel, I am Rachel Alley, Program Director for Youth Ministries. Thank you for joining me today to talk about one of the growing young strategies, prioritizing young people. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Daniel Kirschbaum. I'm the Director of Retreat Ministries at Rainbow Trail Lutheran Camp in Colorado. And I went to school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I studied community and nonprofit leadership. And I got to partner with a really awesome congregation while I was at school there.
Great, thanks. So tell me a little bit about that. So what did you participate in campus ministry, or did you how were you why were you drawn to this church, and do you mind sharing the name of it? And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. So I met Pastor Rob and his wife, Anna Nelson, Rob and Anna Nelson, at Sugar Creek Bible Camp in Wisconsin. They had been staff there, and so they would come and volunteer as a part of the staff training. And I stayed at their house on a day camp for a vacation Bible school week. And they found out I was going to be at Madison, and they're like, "Hey, we're really close by, like 30 minutes away." And I, as a future college student who was not going to have a car on campus, was like, "That's not close by, but cool, great. I'm glad you're in the area." And I had been really interested in campus ministry and kind of looking for that. I was looking for my next faith community. My church was the part of the whole 2009 split, and I felt like, at the end of my high school experience, I was missing that kind of concrete, solid faith community. There was fluctuation, and so I stored it in the back of my head, but didn't really think about it. And then right before school started, I got a text from Rob, and he was like, "Hey, we'd love to have you on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, wow, we're really committing to a lot already." But I was like, "That's great. I don't have a car. I can't really be off campus." And he goes, "Oh no, don't worry. We actually figured all of it out already. We have a congregation member who works on campus. She'll drive you to her house. You'll have dinner there or be ready for dinner. And then we actually have dinner at the church on Wednesday nights most of the time. So if you don't have dinner there, don't get what you need there, we'll get that for you on Wednesday night. And then we do this family faith night. It's like Sunday school, but it's on Wednesday nights, and our whole congregation's there. It's K-5, it's confirmation. Our high school youth are helping out with our K-5. There's adult Bible study. So wherever you feel like you want to plug into that, we'd love to have you." And so I shared I'd love to be part of the K-5. They have a skit team, and I did theater in high school and was excited to be a part of that skit team. It's basically like VeggieTales. It's the same characters every week, and we get to share whatever scripture is going to be talked about on Sunday, so the kids are ready and primed for what that's going to look like on Sunday. And so I started plugging in. At that point, I was the only Sugar Creek counselor or person that I knew that was going to Madison, and so it was just me. And so Wednesdays, I'd be driven by this congregation member, and Sundays, one of the staff members' husbands would drive about 20 minutes into town and then drive me all the way to church and then drive me back. And so there was just this really intentional commitment that I was going to get to church if needed. There were times where those folks were sick or gone for vacation and things, and they found subs really quickly, and they made it so I was there. Sometimes it meant me taking the bus to the edge of town and getting picked up, but they made that work.
Wow, that's great. They made you a priority. So,
Yeah.
and wanted you there. So that's great. Was there anybody like in the congregation that you like made special relationships with, or
Yeah. Well, so throughout the next 4 years, I made a lot of really special relationships, which was awesome. And some that I hold really closely. But first I'll share that. So that first year it was just me. The second year there was 2 of us from Madison, and then another friend started coming from Platteville, which is from the other direction, and that's about an hour. She drove
wow.
about an hour, and Wednesdays and Sundays as well. And by the time I graduated, there was about 6 of us that were doing that commute, either from Platteville or from Madison. Some folks who worked at camp and some who were just friends and were like, "Why are you doing this twice a week? It must be really cool." And so that slowly built. The church was considering, like, should we get a bus? Do we need to, supply a 15-passenger van? And so it ended up happening. A donor from the church supplied gas cards so that the folks using their car wouldn't be paying for their own gas, that wouldn't be a barrier, because that for some of the younger folks, we weren't all in the same car, and that started to be an issue. And so it was addressed right away that, great, we'll take that issue right out of there and we want them here.
Wow.
And so as far as relationships, my vivid, really first memory of just really being seen. First of all, I love to sing, but I am not a singer. And the praise team was like, so Renee Fry, this is New Heights Lutheran Church, by the way, in Black Rose, Wisconsin. Renee Fry, who's was one of the worship leaders, still is, was like, "Oh, we'd love to have you on praise team. Your energy while you're worshiping is so awesome. We want that to be a model for how people are worshiping in this church." And I was like, it's not really for me. And so they still had me stand up there with a microphone and like sing the melody at the same time, you know, way quieter than everybody else. And so that was great. It wasn't my spot, but we were trying to feel it out, and they were open to me experiencing. I tried AV and, you know, did the tech thing for a while. And I ended up landing that on Sunday mornings, I really just wanted to worship, and they embraced that and made space for that. And when Pastor Rob was gone, I was invited to be the worship leader and kind of shepherd the worship along.
Oh, wow.
They practice a shared ministry model. And so we had someone tell their faith story as the message, and I did the welcome and announcements and things like that, and got to do that quite a few times when he was out. And so it ended up being cool. And then Wednesday nights became the space I really got to serve. So Wednesday nights at Halloween, they do a trunk or treat, and Janine, who and now is a dear friend, her husband passed away in my second year there, and I was like, do I go to this funeral? We're just starting this relationship. And so I went, and it ended up being really important and special that I was there. But this Halloween, this first week, I show up, and I didn't have a hat on. It was really cold in Wisconsin on Halloween. I didn't have a hat on, which was just really like a spoof. I mean, I just forgot. It wasn't like I didn't have a hat. But the youngest son of the pastor and I grew to be buddies, and so we were hanging out, and he had this really cool knitted hat on, and I was like, wow, this hat's really awesome. Where's this hat? And Janine is like, I made him that hat. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And she immediately was like, what are your favorite colors? Let's measure your head. Like, finds a tape measure in this church. And like 2 weeks later, I show up to church and I have this hat that is Wisconsin Badger themed, and just incredible. And just for me, it felt like family right away. And it wasn't just Janine. The folks in this community embraced me immediately, cared about, you know, how school was going, but also cared about what life was like. And when I graduated and left, I had full support from them in moving to Colorado, and I received care packages from our Wednesday night youth throughout my first year being not there with them. Now that we've been virtual, I'm still plugged in as a mission partner virtually, which has been awesome. But yeah, really early on, it was clear that it was important to them that I was present and that I was there.
That's awesome. I know that, like, because of your job now at Rainbow Trail, and you work with a lot of congregations, what made New Heights and other congregations that you work with that are growing? Because I'm assuming that New Heights is probably growing.
It is growing fast. They're actually building a new building, which is not something that I hear of a lot happening right now. So it's really awesome.
Why do you think that is? What is the characteristics that you see that bring hope, you know, to us?
Yeah, New Heights has this really deep focus on the Holy Spirit that I don't often experience. And there's a couple of congregations in Rocky Mountain Synod area that I've been working with that there's an attention to listening to how God is calling them. And I think often congregations do that, but there's an intentional space made for that listening, and a real commitment to what they want the church to look like and to who's not there yet. And that's something that New Heights talks a lot about, who's not here yet. And so because that is a priority for them, that allows them to create space and time and energy to welcome folks. And it changes their culture, their congregation too. Like, it was not just the staff that were really welcoming to me, right? It was clear that this church had created a culture of welcome. They were regularly receiving new folks. And so whether I was a young adult or a young family or an older person who hadn't been to that church before, they were prepared to welcome because they'd had practice. They talked about what that looked like. And there was just really intention in there. Like, they don't pass offering plates in the morning because they talk about, we're so excited you're here as a guest. Our mission partners support our church financially, and if you'd like to make an offering, this is the space to do it, but we're not going to pass a plate here. And so just all those kind of little intentional pieces that are really important.
That are welcoming. Yes.
Yeah. The new building they're making, they're calling a community center where they happen to worship.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so rather than a worship center that the community gets to use on their off time. And so just some of those really cool
turning
pieces.
Things upside down.
Yeah, they also had a full-time staff member whose job was welcoming and connecting ministries. And so when we have new families or new folks show up, she immediately is like, who can I set up that they can get dinner together, right? So you immediately have a kind of a connection in that church. And it was done in a systematic way, in a really relational way, but in a really systematic way.
That's awesome. They had really done some planning and changing the culture,
Yeah,
obviously. So to prioritize people.
yeah,
So, and it sounds like they probably trained the members too,
yeah,
did some intentional training on welcoming. Well,
absolutely.
Daniel, thank you so much for sharing with me today, and being a part of this and being a part of the church. I mean, you are a gift to our church,
Thank you.
and wherever you land and in all the places you land, just know you are a beloved child of God. And thank you so much for serving. So, and being on a call with me today this
Yeah,
morning. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
anyway, thanks today. Okay. All righty. So, hopefully you guys can all see me, but just a couple of things that I want you to remember when we are making young people a priority. First is seeing them, hearing them, letting them know that you care about them, and then standing with them, helping them along the way. Um, so prioritize everywhere. And this means including allocating your budget and resources, and paying attention to your youth, your young adult, and your family program. And you might not have any right now, and that's okay. But pay attention, begin to start thinking about what your budget is going to look like if you prioritized young people in your budget. Listen to parents. They desperately need your help. I mean, you probably have all heard the statistics today, um, of suicide, with our young people, of depression, of other mental illness, and our parents are desperate to have mentors and people that are willing to listen. And I think the church is the prime spot today, to be that for our parents. And the next kind of idea is don't ask for a volunteer, but instead ask for someone who will actively participate in your ministry. Look for participants or ministry partners, as Dan described his congregation, that will serve as mentors for our young people, for whether it's a youth or a child or a young adult. And then please, please, please don't use the excuse, don't cancel Vacation Bible School because we don't have any kids, because there is kids in the neighborhood and there are families in your community that need Vacation Bible School, that need to hear the gospel. And Jesus, I don't think, would cancel anything. He would talk to one or he would talk to 100. So don't cancel just with the excuse, well, we don't have any kids, because that's not an excuse. And then finally, don't be afraid when you're prioritizing. Don't be afraid to ask young people to carry a heavy load. They don't. Acolyting is great, but there's a lot of other places that they want to serve in the church, and so don't be afraid to ask them. So we need to make the shift from our young people being important to being intentional about our ministry, and then finally taking action. And so I've asked Pastor Jenny Collins today to join us and to talk about the plan that she created at her church, St. Andrew, in Wisconsin. So it's interesting. Both of you guys were from Wisconsin today. So I'm going to stop my share so that we can have a conversation.
Well, thank you so much for letting me be with all of you. It's great to see you and to know that this work is going on. This was a total Holy Spirit moment that Rachel and I stumbled upon recently. So I feel really grateful to be with you today, and to share how growing young really shaped our congregation. St. Andrew's so wide and not so deep. We're a large congregation, and because of that, the volume really took a toll on faith formation. We didn't go deep. We just kind of were wide. We were looking for substance, and hitting our heads against the wall of creating opportunities that weren't successful. And there was no reason for it because a full third of our 3,200 member congregation is under the age of 29. So the people that give and that are generous are it's not a bulk of that particular population. So it's like, what is the key? What do we do? So I was in my own discernment process, moving from the associate to the lead role. And I said, you know what, we really need to make this a team approach because I don't know what my portfolio is going to look like. And so I just bought 12 copies of Growing Young and I like peddled them out to people, like with my book allowance. I just forced them on people and I said, you're taking this and we'll read this together. And so we formed a group, and following the reading of the book together, we went chapter by chapter. We just pulled, I said, okay, 10 things from this book that struck you. That's your assignment. We came with our top 10, and then we created a communal top 10. These are the top 10 things that really struck us or convicted us as we looked at Growing Young. I don't know, Rachel, is it okay if I share my screen?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Jason, can you make that happen?
Okay. So this is what came out of the book. Can you all see that okay? We created a faith formation task force because any systemic change has got to go through the strategic body, right? It can't just be happening in a corner off to one side. It's got to go from the people who are really focusing on the mission into who are making the decisions if we want to make it systemic. So we created a task force and they met 7 times. We wanted it to be a small commitment. We didn't want to burn anyone out. And what we did was we decided to define faith formation at St. Andrew. We defined it as living out our baptismal covenant, fostering community through connections that create a sense of belonging, and being grounded in the love of Jesus for being equipped to share the message of Christ with confidence. They came up with that. And from their top 10, they developed 10 recommendations based on the book that we just read together. And these 10 came from one of those really great afternoons with all the large Post-it notes. You just throw them up on the wall and every idea goes on the Post-it note. Even the bad ones go on the Post-it note. And then you slowly start looking at which 10 are the most important. And we recognized that it's got to be a whole church response. We're going to be doing this work. It can't just be faith formation or youth ministry or Christian ed, which is what we called it at the time. It's got to be like a whole church thing. So stewardship finance has to have buy-in. Fellowship ministry has to have buy-in. We're really going to do this. So the first thing was to really develop faith formation ministry, create staff leadership, to create opportunities for intergenerational engagement, enhance youth ministry through mentorship, service, integration, and church life. Those were kind of the top 3. And then some of these goals really ironically didn't have to do with faith formation at all, but really more with who we are. So I like 10, seek out ways to make our 40th anniversary a milestone that reaffirms our mission to God and who we want to be. And then we have this really wonderful type A person that made this into an actionable list. So here's what it looks like. Here's the key. Here's a goal, what's the scope, and what's the action? And we broke these 10 down. So develop faith formation ministry and associated staff leadership that supports all members. We're going to do that by merging Christian ed and youth ministries and evaluating the need to create subgroups which focus on particular age education activities which benefit from additional focus. So it hits goals 1 and 3 of our plan. The scope A stands for a relatively quick action that can be achieved in the next 3 to 6 months. Sort of put the timeline in there. And then who's responsible for it? Church council and the faith formation ministry. So those are the 2 groups that are accountable to creating this systemic change. It really helped us to just kind of break down each goal into sub-steps groups and to understand that some of these might be long-term goals. And we didn't make long-term 10 years. Long-term was like 3 to 5 years, 3 to 5 year goals. And we had everybody involved. So here's how we break down our worship, or our ministry. We've got worship personnel, property, social ministry, finance and stewardship, pastoral leaders, lay leaders, ad hoc teams, outreach ministry, and communication ministry. So what happened was we've met most of these and we're still working on some of them, but getting key staff systems in place to be sustainable is really helpful. So when you were talking about budget in that conversation, it really started with the strategic understanding of how we're going to implement growing young into our congregation. And then the other key piece, which doesn't always happen, was putting faith formation on the lead pastor portfolio, not the associate pastor portfolio. It was on the lead pastor portfolio. That was something that was a passion for me that I wanted to take with me. And I think that's what really helped open us up to recognize it can't be the Mickey Mouse of your church anymore, where we're off doing youth ministry in a corner. If it's going to be integration, it's going to be integration, and it's maybe not going to look like youth group or a night at Culver's or whatever the ice cream place is for you. It's going to look deeper than that. So we're going to have young people on staff, teenagers who literally have keys that open the building. We're going to integrate people into like high priority, high stakes roles that are younger. So we had a 14-year-old on the call committee. It just was really helpful for people to see, oh my gosh, youth are engaged and involved, and it's shaping and changing us too. So
Yeah, those load-bearing jobs they can do.
yeah.
Well, Jenny, thank you so much. So growth, can you talk about what you've seen? It doesn't have to be in numbers, but like
Sure.
what kind of growth have you seen at St. Andrews?
Yeah, so COVID broke the church, which I'm sure you all know. Not a threat, but an opportunity. And I think what happened was doing this work directly prior to the pandemic allowed us to understand that if we're going to make decisions, they have to be focused on the mission of our church, to share the gospel, to do that through openness and to be inclusive. So I would say our growth was really just a recentering in who we are, who we're called to be. It was not based in numbers, but we could feel it in numbers. We sensed it in numbers. And that, I think, in a way, helped us to stay resilient in the midst of the pandemic. And I'm very curious how we'll find everybody on the other side as we go through. But I think our growth was really just remembering in our strategic visioning and mission planning that if we're not including people who are younger in these decisions, where's our legacy, or what is it that we're doing? What's our goal? So
yeah. Well, Jen, thank you so much for being here. And if you guys have questions, maybe type them in, chat them in, and Jen can answer back. I'm going to finish up our conversation this morning, and then I want you guys to get into breakout rooms for just a little bit. So here we go. So finally, changing culture and for growing young it begins with listening to everyone, to God, to young people, to your own heart. It requires doing some research, include your parents, your Sunday school teachers, volunteers in your church, older generations, and very important, listening to your church's neighbors. Create a vision, create a team, I would say, but create a vision with a shared story of what that future hope is. And I love, Jenny, the fact that that one of your accomplishments was celebrating your anniversary, and what the future holds. I would tell you too to experiment and to innovate. I mean, our church is we're a reforming church, we're a transformational church, and we truly believe that. So experiment and innovate. Those are just the new words for today. And then treat failure. If you mess up, treat it as an opportunity to learn. If something, if you try something, if it doesn't work, that's all right. We learn from it, and we'll try something else. One of the most important things that I think us as leaders, we tend to do is we think, oh my gosh, well, we've got to worry about Advent, we've got to worry about this program, we've got to pay the bills. I mean, a lot of us have a lot on our plates, but I would say you've got to maintain attention to growing young and the work that you need to do. And then finally, celebrate the small wins with big stories in your congregation, letting everyone know what's good and what's happening. And let's see, there we go. I've got some breakout questions for you. Jason's going to share them with you too as well. But the questions for today are, what surprised you? And then how does what you heard today affect your ministry? And then what shifts can you make in the next few weeks and months? So Jason, if you'll put us in small groups, and we will see you back about 10 till 2.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had inspired conversation. We are anxious to hear what bubbled up during these small group discussion times. What can you share that doesn't break the confidence of your small group partner?
I was really, thank you, Pastor Jen. I was so interested to see the process that you're following and to see that we're actually doing a few of those things, but not in as organized a manner. And I told the people in my small group, I just heard from a member of the congregation this week who hasn't been meeting with us, but who said, I'm a sociologist and I can help you with focus groups. And it's like, this is wonderful. So I'm looking forward to seeing your document and seeing what we can learn from that. So thank you.
And what else, friends?
I made it sound so easy, but it was actually hard. I forgot to add that part, that it did bubble up some conflict that was like in the system of culture, and that we had to talk about allocation of staffing and have really hard conversations, but once we figured out what was needed, the hard conversations were really worth the benefit or payoff. And I think a coach would have really helped, Jill, with with helping the congregation feel empowered to do some of that hard stuff. So I should have added that. That bubbled up in our group a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for naming coaching, Jen, and the benefit that can be, because there is something powerful to having that outside voice there, that objective person asking those questions and listening deeply. And sometimes just even reflecting back when someone from outside your system is reflecting back to you what they're hearing and seeing, you go, what? That's what we look and sound like? And it can be kind of shocking and help inspire you to revision where you think you hear God inviting you to be. Rachel, you were going to add on to that, I think.
Oh, I was just going to say too is, every plan is going to be different. So what worked at St. Andrews might not work at your plan, but the most important thing is to start. It's that that question that we ask pretty much every week. What can you start on and work on this week, and then keep on keeping on with it. And and also know that the plan might not be the silver bullet, but it's a place to start. So
I love that. What's your next most faithful step? That's our consistent question here. And so does anyone here in the room have a faithful step that they named, that they feel like they're going to take in the near future related to this?
Well, one of the things that I was talking about with Myra is I've had a history of being a mentor to kids, and we don't do that currently. So I think I'm going to ask if that's something that we could consider. And in doing that, I also will make sure that if they're interested, I'm willing to help find those mentors. Because I can't give them any more. I live in Washington, and anybody who knows Washington, we have less than like 25% of the people go to church here. So so we don't have a lot of, you cannot burden our pastors with much more. So we have to help them.
Yeah, that's great.
One of the things that we heard in our small group, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Was that idea of really looking at what the kids do and do well. And so to invite them into roles and not just a one-time thing, or, you know, or kind of off in the corner like Jen was talking about, but really make them part of just the life of the congregation, and how, you know, inviting them into ways to serve. And then one of the next steps that one person recognized was about getting them to help be involved in the decision-making processes that really change the culture, and to not exclude them in that process. So much work to do.
Yeah, I loved when Dan talked about, you know, he also talked about Janine in the hat, but he got to wear a lot of different hats on Wednesday nights, you know, and the church gave him that opportunity to, you know, he didn't want to sing up front, but, you know, that opportunity, the sound system, and our young, that is so great for our young people to be able to test, you know, and find out. Well, I will, I'm going to close this for today unless anybody else has anything else to share.
We talked about one of the things was our seniors. We had to first get acclimate our seniors, because a lot of them are stationed where they are and they are happy there, and they're not really interested in bringing any young people in. And so that's what we have to do. We have to deal with the seniors first and let them know, because a lot of the seniors are afraid that we're going to take their positions from them, you know, as opposed to training the next person for them. And you can always be the trainer and there for that person, but it's not to take it away. It's just to work together. And
Amen.
so that was the main concern. And then, of course, families don't go to church like they used to, like we used to go. You don't see the mom and dad and all the children behind them anymore. Like you said, in DC, 45%, they don't attend church. It's only amazing what's going on in Illinois. So.
Yeah.
Rachel,
Yeah,
before
I love
you,
that. This is, I mean, and basically when you're chatting, oh yeah. I was just going to say, as you're working with your seniors, that's a cultural change. So that's a big change. So good for you for having those hard conversations.
When they listen,
Jill, go ahead.
This has been one of the best things about this book, is that, you know, going through it and reading it and seeing the strategies. And I think if you can get to chapter 2, I think is keychain leadership. If you can sell keychain leadership, that's huge, because, you know, the seniors in our church too, a lot of them don't want to see change, but on the other hand, where's the church going to be in 10 years? You know, are we going to be closing our doors because we've shut out all the young people?
you all are asking great questions. I love the reflections that are being shared. We just have to take a minute to express our deep, deep thanks to Rachel for being with us so many times to help us unpack this book, this important book, and Pastor Jen for being here with us and showing us what this can look like. Thank you for sparking our imagination and showing us how God is working through the people of St. Andrews and through your leadership to help make this a place of new life. And bringing some of these things to good fruit. We just appreciate you so much. And Rachel, before you close, I want to just take a minute to talk about next week and to just name a few things. So once again, 60 times, friends, we've gathered in this space, and all 60 of those times, there's one person who's been here every time. And Jason O'Neill, I just want to honor you for consistently being here, showing up. All of you don't maybe know everything he does behind the scenes. He has a lot of contact with the speakers, making sure that they know how to log on and what our event flow is like. He's making sure that that the space is open early, and then afterwards he makes sure that everything is recorded, friends. So all this good information, it's gold, and people go out and listen to the recordings. Jason often is up late into the night editing these recordings to make sure that they are available as soon as possible, and gathering all these resources like this beautiful document that Pastor Jen shared to make sure that it's readily available on our website. Jason, for everything that you do, but most especially for who you are, the energy that you bring to this space. We thank God for you. And everything that you've helped create this to be. I also want to lift up Deacon Tammy Devine. We notice that people like to hang on after the hour and have additional small group conversation. And Deacon Tammy has stepped into that space and brings her deep sense of spirituality and closes it with just deep, meaningful prayer every time. All of our coaches, the coaches that come and help facilitate these small group conversations, thank you for showing up week after week. And so, friends, with this, I will also say that for everything there is a season, and every time and every purpose under heaven. This is a popular text from Ecclesiastes. And with this backwards glance, it helps me name that our gathering is also entering a new season. We've talked a lot, and our team has decided that we need to push pause on what we've been carrying for the past year and discern what would best serve those we love. And of course, that's all of you. So next week, instead of having a guest speaker, the guest speaker will be you. You will be invited to share your responses to a set of questions that we hope together will help us explore and discern more fully what this time might be after taking a pause. What would be most supportive for you, our leaders? Jason will include these questions in the gathering invitation for next week, and we do hope that you will join us. It will be a very important conversation and also a time for celebrating all that has happened in this space that God created in this very unusual time. And so now, with all of this being said, Rachel, I invite you to bring us into a time of final prayer and blessing, and Tammy will stay on for that small group conversation.
So I just want to remind you of the Bible verse from Acts 2:17 and 18. In the last days, it will be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even upon my servants, both men and women, in those days I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy. This is a final prayer for you, or a blessing. It's by Bishop Untner, a Catholic bishop in Michigan, who was very progressive in his time, and I reflect on this a lot. It helps now and then to step back and take the long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is another way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that should be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes the church's mission. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. But this is what we're all about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that the future is held. We lay foundations that will need development. We provide yeast that produces effects far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and to do the rest. We may never see the results, but that is the difference between the master builder and us, the workers. We are workers, not master builders. We are ministers. We're messiahs, but we're not the Messiah. We are prophets of a future, not our own. Amen. God bless you, and thank you for everything that you're doing to grow our church younger, but more importantly, to share the gospel with everyone that you encounter these days. God bless and good luck. And if you need me, you know how to find me.